Welcome everyone to TAP. Today we will speak about a few books, it seems. Black Paths and Green Cathedrals from this year, the second edition, 2026, and also Unveiling the Green from 2025. And I feel like these books are, well, they're books, but they're also, in a way, journeys that take our spirit somewhere. So let's see where we go today. My guest and author is Sian Sibley, and she writes about herself in one of those books. I'm a scientist, and I have an MSc in applied biology, and I have spent years in research and development, working within the structures of academia, where evidence is king and where the world is neatly divided into measurable, quantifiable truth. I'm also a pagan, an alchemist, and a witch. You might have noticed a bit of a clash in that list. To say that these worlds have not always sat comfortably together would be an understatement. Sian Sibley, I'm so glad to welcome you here and to hear more about your background like that and those hard choices that you've had to make. Welcome to TAP.
Thank you, Manna. I'm really pleased to be here. It's wonderful to talk to you. The ideas around science. It's a weird one because I love science. I think it's a wonderful way of looking at the world because it can adjust its point of view. If new evidence comes up, then science can adjust it. But it's also extremely limiting in that there's no room in science for personal experience. It's all evidentiary and it has to be shown to be repeatable. And personal experience can't be repeated in any way. It's always completely personal to the person working. And finding the sort of bridge between the two of those is quite difficult. But it's something that I think has to be done. Otherwise, they are discounting in science so much evidence. A classic example of it is probably about 30 years ago. There was an anthropological investigation into shamanism in the rainforest. And when the scientist asked the shaman where they were taught about the plants, the shaman said, the plants taught us. And that was completely negated by the study. It's only in the last recent years people have been going back to that and realizing that actually dismissing Indigenous knowledge like that and personal experience is very, very bad for science because you're closing down a particular field of study.
And the plants taught us that is actually very accurate, right? According
Yeah,
to what your books have taught you.
definitely. I mean, from personal experience, I've been working with plants now for probably around 15 to 20 years. And each plant has something different to teach you. But what I find is that each plant will teach individuals different things. And it very much depends on how you come into the relationship, what your mental health is, what your emotional situation is, what you need to exchange with the plant, and the way you are. For example, when I started working with mugwort, which was one of my first plants, I was in the middle of my menopause, and I worked with it as a dreaming plant. So that it came through to me as a very much associated with dreams and with opening gates and that sort of stuff. My colleague in my coven was menstrual and she was having dreadful problems with her bleeding, and she worked with it as a blood plant because it is a blood plant as well. So it depends on how you come into that relationship. Very much the same as talking to a person. You're not the same person to your boss as you are to your husband. Well, I hope not anyway. It's and we forget sometimes, if you believe that plants are people,
Yeah.
they will be different. I've got plants that don't like me, that won't want to work with me, and I have to respect that.
Okay.
It is important that we understand they are individuals themselves.
Mm. Yeah, that is also a main thing of the book. I've been trying to tell people what it was about because I've talked about I had to interview you, and one of the things was that like treat plants as people. I mean, there's a lot of information in there, so let's go through some of it. I've made some notes. because there's so much information. So, but this book from 20 this year, 2026 is your second edition, right?
Yes.
And so you say that you publish the second editions of Black Path and Green Cathedrals not only to refine ideas, but to push them further, to challenge you, as I continues to challenge myself, to look again at what it means to walk the richest path in a time of ecological crisis.
Yeah.
Say something about that.
Well, when I wrote Black Paths, there's two things that happened when I originally wrote Black Paths. I was in the middle of doing my master's degree in ecology and spirituality, so I hit it when I was in a particularly academic way of writing. So I wanted to write it so that everyday people could read it rather than being overwhelmed with academic language.
Mm.
And secondly, there were three things I discovered. I met more trees, so I wanted to include the relationship with those. But also, things had changed in the ecological and environmental world. For example, I wanted to include in the book the information on the fact that our ideas around recycling are actually not what we think they are. We are recycling religiously as households, particularly people that are concerned about the environment. You know, we all wash our yogurt pots, we all recycle our glass, we all put our cardboard in different bags. And yet the rich elite are not involved in it at all. They're still taking private air flights, which are causing a dramatic amount of carbon dioxide release. They are still paying for companies, and this is the bit that really frustrates me. We are religiously putting our recycling into different things, but the companies that deal with the recycling that are owned by the elites ship our rubbish to Thailand and it's put into landfill. It's a lie. It's a complete and utter green lie. And we need, as pagans particularly, to start raising our voices about these things that we've been sold, where we think we are acting in a green manner, but in actuality, it's not real. And one of the absolute hysterical things that I wrote about was the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio, for example, flew to Norway in a private jet to pick up an award on ecological work.
Mm.
It just makes no sense. You know, we're tackling the wrong part. We're making poor people recycle and do all these things, but rich people can do what they want.
Oh man, and then you can have like a healthy conscience. Say I've did what I'm supposed to do because there's a lot of guilt here as well.
Yeah.
We
Well,
caused this.
I'm not saying recycling is bad. I think it's something we all should do, but we can't hold people to different standards just because they have more money. You know, I mean, sadly, that appears to be the way things are at the moment in the world.
Mm-mm. Why would they do that? I can't help to think. Why would they do that with the
Yeah,
landfill in Thailand?
yeah, yeah. Because it's disappeared from our country
Yeah, okay.
to a country that is, considered to be a third world country. So it doesn't matter over there. You
Okay.
know, we can't see it, so we
Mm,
don't change it.
mm,
That's the truth of it. But
mm,
so that was one of the reasons that I wanted to write the second edition. I had more experience with the trees. I was working more with the yew. I was working more with other trees that were giving me other different pieces of information. And it's interesting with the trees. Working with trees is very different than working with the plants that I was talking about in Unveiling the Green. When you work with flowers, it's quick. It's quite quick. When you work with trees, you have to slow down because they go so much slower than we do. And one of the issues that we have in Western society is everything needs to be fast.
Oh, really, really, it is.
Yeah.
I'm really feeling that in my own body. I mean, oh man, yeah. I don't know actually because I didn't feel like this when I was younger, but I think because I wasn't as much in touch with my body. I think that is the reason. Because I've been thinking about it. Is it just because as I age, I need the tempo slower? But actually, I think it was because I wasn't aligned with my body's needs.
Yeah. I also think that as you get older, you suddenly realize that the things that you thought were important are not actually important at all. You,
Yeah.
you, it's one of the things that I talk about a lot when I do talks in pagan camps, and it's this idea of we've been sold over the last 50 years that we have to have it all. You have to be in work, you have to have a house, you have to have it all, but it can't be small. It has to be big. You have to have the new car and the new iPhone and the new this. Whereas in reality, what you need is enough. And
Mm.
one of the things I talk about in the book is if you can define your own enough, what makes you contented and satisfied, that is what will make you happy. Because in reality, there's no such thing as happiness. Happiness is a side effect of being content and satisfied. So it's really interesting. And I will say that I think the younger people, I see a lot of younger people housing like TikTok and YouTube who are living in small houses, who are
Mm.
embracing time as a concept that is theirs rather than selling their time
Mm.
to a company. And when you get that realization that actually the thing that is most important is time.
Yeah. 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 So changes are coming and people are realizing it, and the younger generations are wiser than us.
Oh, definitely, definitely, and it frustrates me as a Gen X person that I I look at people of my age. I'm 60 now, and they criticize the younger people. They call them lazy, but what they are is wise,
Yes.
understanding that what they're selling, it doesn't pay. They're not getting the things that we got when we were younger, and B, by selling your time, you're giving away the best part of your life.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Oh man, I'm all about that slowing down now. Okay, so what can help us slow down to make that segue is the connection to the plants. And
Mm.
I want to get to the point in the book where you talk about before the Industrial Revolution that our relationship with plants was one of cooperation, of mutual exchange, and it was in an interwoven existence. And I love this. If the plants failed, so did we.
Yeah,
Plants failed, so did we.
yeah. What before the Industrial Revolution, people lived with the land. They didn't live on the land. Okay, and what happened because we had to grow our own food. There was trade. Let's not romanticize it. There was trade. We did use the land. We grazed cattle on it, but we had this relationship with the living organisms that gave us life. So we would harvest the wheat. We would kill the pig. Okay, it's about that relationship. And when we worked with the land, for example, human feces, cow feces, whatever feces we had, went onto the land to help the animal, the plants grow. Okay. And there was this reciprocal relationship. When we went out into nature to pick herbs for treating disease, there was that relationship that went on as well. That there was that respect that went on. But what happened in the Industrial Revolution? You had two things going on at the same time. The first one was the Land Enclosures Act, and that stopped people going onto land that previously they'd been able to go onto freely. Okay. And then you had the Industrial Revolution. And what happened with the Industrial Revolution is that we moved people from the villages and the countryside where they were in touch with the land into towns that had been made particularly for perhaps a mill or a mine or something that was needed for industrial. And then we devalued those people by making them work in conditions that were just untenable. And one of the things that I never realized, and I had a chat with a folklorist, and this is about 3 or 4 years ago now, and I was gobsmacked when they said, what was the first dehumanization that was seen in the mines and in the factories? And it was the invention of the sandwich and the pasty, because when you have a sandwich, you eat that at the place that you work. You don't get time to go and sit and enjoy a meal with your family or with your friends. You have
Mm.
to eat it. And the pasty, particularly the Cornish pasty, is quite famous among miners because the crust on the bottom, you know, that big thick crust on a pasty, you hold that and it's to stop the food getting dirty because you don't even get to wash your hands while you eat the food and you throw that crust away. That is active dehumanization. You are then not a human in work, you are a human in a machine.
But you're talking about just eating a sandwich is what we're talking about really is this disconnect formed between the human psyche and the natural world. That's a quote from
Yes.
the book.
Because meals before then, meals were something that you had with your work, with your family, really, because you were working on the land. You know, that you've always had situations where families have got together around a table. This was the first time that people would eat on their own, maybe with their mates, but underground if they were mining, or in the mill if they were in the mill. So it's quite dehumanizing. You don't get that chance. And you know as well as I do it, even now today, if you have a lunch, it's very rare that you go out and sit at a table and have a lunch unless you're in a works canteen. And even then, there's that pressure to get back to work,
Yes, there
you know.
is.
And that's taking away an aspect of, for example, you don't get the idea that you bless the food. You don't get the idea that you sit with the food and be thankful to the animal or the plant that you had it from. The
Oh,
the Christian saying grace over the food. That didn't happen anymore because you had to rush to eat
yeah.
the food. And that's part of that disassociation. Also, there's three things that go on in Unveiling the Green, I think it is. There's an experiment that I put in, which is, and let's see if you can do it. I'll work it with you, okay? Can you
Okay.
tell me, sitting there now, can you tell me where your nearest clean water supply for drinking is? And it can't be a tap and it can't be a toilet,
N- No. If it's
right?
not a tap, then
So if something happened and your water was cut off, you would be dead within about 3 days, 3 to 4 days, okay?
oh,
Because that's how long you can last without water.
oh no.
Secondly, if I brought an animal into a room and asked you to kill it and dress it, could you do that?
No, I
So
could
you
not.
just handed over your ability to feed yourself to Tesco's. So you are indentured now to a supermarket. You can't survive without them providing you food. That's what this disconnect has done. Okay, it's you. Can you go out into the woods and see what plants are edible?
I don't live near any nature.
Yeah, and that's the problem. If something happens, you know, at the moment the world is in a bit of a crappy place, isn't it? And if something happens, it's not just you that would die. Millions would die because we've been completely cut off from the very thing that provides us with our food.
Oh man. Oh man. And I d- I wrote you in the email that I also felt like I wanted to declare to you that I'm not very green.
Yeah,
I'm not very familiar with the greens. And so I feel like this is part of the problem, but this is a wound. This is, you talk about it as a wound, right?
yeah.
And
It is. It's not about being green in the modern definition of being green, like recycling, like
no,
uh, being vegan, like being all of that. Okay, it's about that root deep disconnect that we have from nature. The fact that we see ourselves as above nature and not within nature. Where
right.
in reality, if without nature, we can't exist. You know, it's one of the things that I watched on the news yesterday is that at the moment it's raining oil in Iran. Okay,
Raining.
it's rain because they've blown up the oil refineries. The oil is coming back down in the rain. The
Mm.
ecological damage of that, besides the poor people,
Yeah.
that's horrific, you know. But we don't seem to see it. We don't look at it. And one of the things I talk about in Unveiling the Green is the fact that we're plant blind.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because we have never lived in a world that didn't have plants. So they become background to us because they're so much older than we are. You know, you're talking about species that are 3 billion years old, whereas we are about 150,000 if you go with the latest, most recent research on when we arrived. And I always do this. If you stretch out your arms, plants, and you assume that the planet originated in your right hand at your fingertip, okay? Plants arrived sort of about there. Bacterial plants arrived there. We as humans are on that tip of the left hand. That's when we arrived. That's the difference
We
between
are so small compared to the plant world. Is that
we're so new. And yet,
new? Yeah.
because of the way that religion and science has worked, we think we are better than the plant world, you know.
I mean, my girlfriend just gave me plastic flowers for my birthday present, and the old me, Sian, before reading you, and this is recent, right? Within the last couple of months, I've been reading you. Is the old me would have been like, yes, because I don't have to do anything about it. I'm sorry.
No, no, I
Sorry, but
understand.
because I'm not very good with it. I'll forget it, and I thought this is great. It'll last forever. But this time I was like, oh no, I actually wanted fresh plants because of reading you. Because it changes you when you read what
Well,
you're saying.
one
Yeah.
of the reasons I wrote Black Paths is because I've been a pagan a long, long time, and I've noticed that pagans we are espousing that we are in a green religion. We talk about the earth being at the center of our philosophies and ideologies, okay?
Mhm.
And yet we use things without thinking about the consumer aspect, like crystals. I very much go into crystals in Black Paths because crystals are mined in exactly the same way as coal is mined, in exactly the same way as gold is mined. And we then think that they're improving our spirituality. But how can they improve our spirituality when we're ripping them out of the earth in exactly the way that extractive ideology that the Western peoples have? You know, you are far better off going to your local beach or going to your local field and finding rocks to work with there rather than shipping them all the way over from, many of them are from South America, and many of the industries that get crystals employ child labor. So it's a really difficult one.
It's a really dark truth, and I'm always in interviews. I hold one in my hand to uh, feel safe. But then, what you say in the book, I like that you take care of me like that. You say it's fine with your crystals, just don't buy any more.
That's it. You can't. I've got crystals, you know, because when I came into crystals, when I came into paganism, it was what you did. You followed on with what you thought was the right thing. It's only when you actually sit and research it and think about it that you realize that it's not good. And the other thing that I talk about quite extensively is the way that we are causing extinction in the plants that we hold sacred, like frankincense, incense, where we are, there's so many pagans now, there's so many new age people now that use frankincense that we are literally bleeding the boswellia trees because frankincense comes from the resin of the boswellia tree, and they are becoming extinct, they're becoming endangered because we are using them in that way. So it's not about stopping doing what you're doing, it's about using what you have and then looking at how you can live by going out into the world around you. And you can find these things in cities. You know, there's a wonderful book by a lady called Lynn Shaw who talks about working in cities with nature and finding that spirituality. And she's a brilliant lady. She's lovely. Her book is fantastic. And it's really important that we don't think that just because we live in a built-up area that we are removed from it, because we're not. You're walking on the earth. It's just under that pavement. You just got to reach through the pavement to find it. You know, and all those little plants that come up left, right, and centre through the pavements. Talk to them.
I think you're right. It is about noticing it and being more mindful and slowing down and like, oh, there was a plant.
Yeah, exactly. Let's stop and have a chat.
Oh man, it is so good. It is so good what you're saying. I want to get to you just you have brilliant quotes. You're so easy to quote. It's like, that was delicious. So you have this quote. And the reason why it's delicious is because it's so spot on. It's really hits me. It just encapsulates exactly how I feel. And this is one of them where you say hunger is a powerful force. When faced with starvation, dignity is easily traded for survival.
Yeah,
Dignity is easily traded for survival. I mean, it's just even what we were talking about before with selling our time. This is how it feels. It's like I
but
have to
that's
survive. So I guess I'm
exactly,
not.
exactly. And one of the most fundamental things is control of your food.
Yeah.
And if you think about the way that in some countries, particularly America, you are not allowed to grow your own food. Okay. You're not allowed to catch rainwater to feed your plants. It's not allowed, it's against the law.
Oh,
Okay. And that is the ultimate control. As I said, if you don't know how to find food in the wild or kill an animal to eat and dress it, you have handed over control of your life to the supermarket. And I, everybody is hypocritical. I shop in a supermarket. I try to grow my own food, but I live right in the middle of a wood, and it's so dark here because of the trees that So my best effort to try and combat that is I try and make sure that I buy my food from places that I know how the animal's being kept, how the whether the plants are grown with um, pesticides and herbicides. I try and make that conscious effort.
and that's the same with the crystals. It's also like we don't just be fooled by, oh, this is gonna make you more in touch with spirit. You have to actually look at where is it from. Like
Exactly.
just be,
One of the things
conscious.
that worries me with crystals, though, is part of the research that I did was because a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, I only buy ethically sourced crystals."
Yeah.
There is no such thing as an ethically sourced crystal. Okay, I
Okay.
went into 5 shops when I was doing my research and asked them for their documentation on their ethically sourced crystals, and they don't have any. So it doesn't exist. Okay, it's just something that we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better,
Mm.
and it's not. But yeah, the food thing.
Mm.
It's that there's an old saying that says you are what is it? You are 3 weeks away from murder when it comes to food. If you don't have food for 3 weeks, you will kill for food. Okay, it's one of the most fundamental things as animals that we have to have. We have to have food. So if you
Yeah.
control the food, you've got control of the populace because people will do anything for food.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking when you said that, and if you then also don't sleep,
Yeah.
then murder is gonna
Interesting.
happen.
I'm in the middle of writing a new book at the moment about the healing and magical healing and like a history of magical healing. And one of the things that I discovered when I was researching there is that the fact that we have lights everywhere
Yeah.
in our society, and the fact that we are trained to get up at a certain time with alarms and night shifts will give people dreadful health.
Yes.
The more research I did on it, the more depressed I got. So you seriously, you really need sleep,
Yeah.
water, food, and shelter. That's all you need. And books, yeah, you can see them.
And and a few books, right? To inform us, right? And all the things that we maybe also don't want to see sometimes because
Yeah,
it is a difficult truth. It's like, okay, then what am I supposed to do? But I think what we're suggesting here is just step by step
yeah.
explaining the
But the
consequence
the
about
thing I want to make sure, because I always think I sound like a doomsayer when I'm talking about these things, you have to understand that human beings are fantastic creatures. Okay, we are capable of great beauty. We're capable of love,
mm.
art, music, literature, all of those things, all of the relationships that we have. When I talk to the trees, they mostly want us to work with the positive things that we do because we do them very well. I talked about I have a relationship with Blackthorn, okay, and she is she's a magnificent tree, yeah? But her idea is that she's one of these trees that she doesn't suffer fools gladly at all. And the thing that she taught me was, don't fall under the illusions that people are trying to sell you at the moment. We are living in a time at the moment of great illusions. There's a lot of, as you're aware, there's a lot of astrological things going on that are making those illusions seem real to us. AI, the idea that elite people have different laws than we do, they are illusions. And the biggest illusion of all is the illusion of money. Money isn't real. Money is a representative of something. It's not a real thing. So the act of wanting money and being obsessed with it, which is what this billionaire idea is, that's not real. It's an illusion. And Blackthorn very much slapped me around the head. One of the little poems, when I do work with trees, they give me little poems. It comes out in poetry. And her idea was, she said, and I'm assuming she was talking about the person that's in charge in America at the moment. She talks about the emperor waving his balls in the wind, and everyone looks and says, yes, it's a win. It's about that illusion of greatness, whereas in reality, the people that are great are the people that are working on the ground in places like Palestine, the people that are doing the medical research and curing cancers. They are the real greatness, not this illusion, this idea of celebrity. It's a circus. It's distraction at its best.
That has to go down. That
Yeah,
has to go down.
it has. And for women particularly, women are being sold this idea that we have to be perfect. We don't. We have to be us. We have to be us, and we have to be heard. That's the important bit for women, is to allow our point of view to come across rather than the male.
So let me know, is this actually the answer around how trees actually actively relate to enlightenment? Because you said that
massively so. But the thing you have to remember is these guys are billions of years old, right? So anybody there was a wonderful experiment done by a lovely lady called Dr. Monica Gagliano, okay? And I talk about her work a lot because she did something magnificent. I'm an ex-scientist, okay? So I'm used to doing experimental work. And what she did was, one of the ways that intelligence is defined is that somebody that can predict what is going to happen is defined as being intelligent, because you have to have imagination and be able to imagine an outcome. Okay, so that's intelligence. When they were testing intelligence, what they did was they used a rat in what's called a drop box. Okay, so they put the rat in a drop box and they drop the rat. And the first time they do it, the rat responds with reflex action. It goes, because it thinks it's going to die. Okay, but if you drop the rat regularly in a rhythm, the rat will understand that actually it's not going to die, so it stops reacting reflexively. Makes an intelligent decision that it's not going to get hurt, therefore I'm not going to waste my energy by having a reflex action. It takes control of its own cognition. Okay, so what Monica Gagliano did was she put a mimosa plant. Now, a mimosa plant is the one that when you touch it, the leaves close, okay, to protect its own chlorophyll and its own leaf structure so it can feed itself. And what Monica did was, in the rat, after 7 times, the rat stopped reacting. Monica did exactly the same experiment with a mimosa plant. It took 5 times for the mimosa plant to stop reacting.
So it's smarter.
That's smarter. Yeah, okay. But the really important thing is when they put the rat in the cage a week later and they dropped the rat went straight back to that reaction. Okay, it hadn't remembered the response, but the mimosa had. When they dropped the mimosa, it didn't react. So if you have a plant that can imagine an outcome, can affect its own cognition, so is affecting its muscular response, and remembers that this wasn't dangerous, so it wasn't going to get hurt, that is intelligence. But because we don't, one of the things that people have a real problem with is the fact that plants don't have a head torso and legs, and they don't move.
That they don't move. This is what I tried to explain to my friend.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like saying we don't value it because it stands still, but that's actually it's really cool that it's adapted that way.
Fantastic, because what their response, their evolutionary response, is, if, for example, if I am standing in the middle of a jungle and a big cat comes out, my response will take over and I will run. Okay, probably screaming loudly. All right. A plant, when it gets attacked, can lose an entire limb and just grow it back. They're what's called a Lego modular design. Yeah. And what's even better is, as whatever is munching on my branch is munching away, this side, I'm giving out chemicals through my roots and through the air to tell the next door neighbor, look, this beetle is coming. You need to put some chemicals out that make you taste nasty. So there's that communicative community aspect to them as well. They're amazing creatures. Honestly, they're fantastic people.
And so now you're talking about plants and then also trees, because that's also a part of the symbolism. This is so cool how symbolism is. There's so many correspondences, and but this is pure nature,
Yeah.
like how it
Well,
works in actual nature. Yeah.
when we were talking about trees in the religious texts,
Yeah.
yes, if you research the trees in the religious texts, you've got the tree of good, the knowledge of good and evil
Yeah.
in, but you've also got the tree of life. Okay, so there's two trees in the Garden of Eden. You've got Yggdrasil in the Norse tradition. You've got there's a big tree in the Buddhist tradition, and for the life of me sitting here now, I can't remember his name. There are trees in every religion, but what happens is that once those trees, because if you think about it, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the reason for our sentience. Yeah, to be able to tell the difference. If you follow a Christian philosophy, and don't forget that the Bibles weren't originally Jewish; they were originally Chaldean, and it goes back and back and back. These mythologies, okay. That act of biting into the apple was not a sin. It was a woman taking charge of her own sentience. It was her deciding that she could discriminate between what was good and what was bad. That is not a sin. That is a gift. And that was a gift from a tree. Everybody concentrates on the serpent, Lucifer. Yeah. Everybody thinks that act of giving Eve the apple is a sin. The only sin was that by allowing us to have sentience, it allowed us to understand that sometimes God is wrong.
Sometimes God is wrong. Sian, is this part of your, because you have another book that you sent me a little bit of, Medusa?
Yes, I've written a pagan portal on Medusa. It's I wanted to write something for women to understand where this idea that we have to be controlled comes from. And
Yeah.
it comes from somebody called Solon in the ancient Greek. And what he did was he brought in these laws. It was a particularly manic time in Greek history. He brought in these laws that caused women to have to be controlled, and that has fed through into Christianity, into Islam, into the book religions. And it's why women today are considered, and it's part of the ancient, there's stuff in ancient Greek, not mythology, but in ancient Greek philosophy, where man, particularly elite men, educated men, are associated with intellect,
Uh-huh.
and women are associated with emotion. And that's where that thing comes from. Oh, no, they can't be the prime minister or the president because they're too emotional. Okay. That comes from ancient Greece. It's not originally a Christian thing, which people say. I thought it was until I did the research. But yeah, it's a very, it's a ridiculous ideology. I can't even put it that way. But yeah, the work on Medusa is talking about, and there's a bit in Medusa that I've written where, because in the ideology of Christianity and in mechanism particularly, you have this idea that God is outside the physical world and that the physical world is somehow lower and less important and depraved in some way. It's evil, and women are associated with that. And what you find in the world is when the world is being treated badly, so ecologically and environmentally we're being treated badly, women are being treated badly as well, because it comes across in the same way.
And just to be clear, Medusa is this.
The snakehead goddess, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
She
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 has.
is she is the goddess where the mythology is that she was a priestess of Athena, and she was raped on the steps of the Athena temple by Poseidon, the god of the sea. And Athena, having seen the rape, punishes Medusa by turning her into a monster, rather than holding the man responsible, the god responsible for her own rape. And if you, when you read the book, if you read the sort of the underlie of that, the fact that Athena originally was somebody called Potmea, and she has been degraded by the fact that in Olympian myth, she's always been there. Athena is not an Olympian. She was degraded from a serpent goddess herself. She was Potmea, the goddess of beasts and goddess of nature. She was degraded when the Olympians came in, and her mother, Maya, was eaten by Zeus when she was pregnant, and Athena is supposed to have been born from Zeus's forehead, but she's fully armed, and she is in, because it's a parthenogenetically male birth. She's male. She's a goddess in male form, which is why she blames Medusa. So she's been degraded as well. The goddesses of the Olympians aren't the original goddesses. They were messed about with to give men more power over women.
Oh man, so she's actually male.
Yeah. Well, she if you look at her,
Yeah.
her attitude towards other women is male. She's armored.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. In those days, women didn't wear armor.
Right.
So, and she's parthenogenetically born from Zeus's forehead. There's no female involvement because her mother was destroyed when he ate her.
It's interesting because we use that symbol in astrology with Pallas Athena. So okay, something to think about.
Yeah. But if you think about the astrological associations of Pallas Athena, they are quite aggressive, aren't they? They're quite
Yeah, yeah,
Martian in the way that it acts on people, and that sort of backs up what I'm saying. And
yeah.
people who follow Athena will probably argue with me, and I'll get shouted at for that one. But
But
it's
that's
it's
the
what the
thing.
research
It's
brings up.
what it's what the research brings up, and it's important to reflect about these things. That's
Mm,
what I really love about your work. To That's what I'm talking about with like you're bringing us on a path and to see more and more and like think, oh, really? And I feel my whole life has been about reprogramming,
mm.
and it's
Yeah,
still going on. Just even what you were talking about, just that example of thinking someone can't be a woman if she's in power. Uh, I
yeah.
mean,
And yet it's really funny because if you look at some of the responses, I find it really interesting to watch the responses of men when they're put under pressure, and they are so much more emotional than females because they get angry,
yeah,
and they forget sometimes that anger is an emotion, and
yeah,
they can be very aggressive in their anger if
yep,
they're put under pressure.
yep, yeah, I've seen that.
Women don't tend to do that. Women tend to internalize anger rather than expressing it, which is in itself is a bad thing in some ways because we don't raise our voices enough.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I like a angry woman,
Yeah,
once in a
yeah.
while.
I love I love to think about myself. If I ever met Trump, he would think I was a nasty woman.
You would like that. Oh, Sian, I have so many questions for you, and we don't have a lot of time left. So let's
No
see.
problem.
Let's see. So yeah, okay. So I'm asking you here in my notes about astrology because you say that to work alchemically with our plant friends, you need a basic understanding of astrology.
Yeah.
Did you talk about the esoteric sympathies?
Yes. Well, what tends to happen, as it with humans, I'm a Scorpio with the 29th of Libra rising, which is so close to Scorpio rising, and I am intense. I express that Martian intenseness in my personality. Plants do exactly the same thing. Okay, plants will be like, for example, vetiver, which is a plant that lives in the wild round by me. If you look at Nicholas Culpeper, he associates vetiver with Venus. Okay, and it's a very loving plant. It's quite easy to connect. I think it's Venus in Gemini because it's one of the only plants that when I was taking it home, I went out and got myself. I always ask permission. Okay, you never just take. You go and work with the plant in the wild, and then you take it home if it allows you to. I got a little vetiver and took it home. And as I'm going home, normally you have to spend hours trying to get a conversation going. This little thing was gibbering away in my ear, and it's the communication aspect of it says Gemini all over it. There's Mercury in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And things like nettle it's a plant that's got stings. It's a plant that has massive amounts of iron in it. It's a Martian plant. And I think the biggest surprise to me when I was working with the garden plants was buttercup, because when you look at buttercup, it's a sun plant. It's yellow, it's welcoming, it's lovely, until you actually interact with it or touch it, and then it's a Martian plant to its bones. It's aggressive. It doesn't. Remember, I said some plants don't want to work with you. Buttercup didn't want anything to do with me at all. It was in my face. It was aggressive, and I was touching the leaf, and it gives off a sap that causes blisters on your fingers. Okay, it's extremely Martian, and I think that added idea of astrological sympathy is perfect for it. And I use it when I'm making tinctures. If I'm making spagyric tinctures, I will, for mugwort, for example, I will put the tincture on in the Venus hour on a Friday, but I will wait until the moon is in Cancer so that I've got that moon aspect as well. And I run it through the 2 planetary hours so that you get a lovely strong tincture.
So this goes deep.
Yeah. It's when you work with plants, you can go. It's a proper magical system. It's not just having a chat with your local dandelion. It's about forming those relationships and letting the plant teach you. And one of the things we do poorly in the Western society is stopping and listening, just stopping and seeing what the other thing has to say. And what you get with plants, the way that I receive it, and as I said, other people will find it in different ways. I get pictures when I sit in meditation with a plant. I will get pictures, and it'll inform. When I was working with a yew tree, the idea that the yew tree gave me was that time is that's where I started formulating the ideas that it's time that we're selling, and it's time that is really, really important in our lives. But one of the things that yew tree said to me was, I worked with it just after my mother had passed away. So I was asking all of those questions about, where is she? What's going on? Is she okay? That sort of stuff. And the yew tree, it's very slowly, it took me 6 months to develop a relationship for it to even see I was there, because it's so slow. I mean, these are 5,000-year-old trees, they're immortal trees almost. And it said to me, humans are very funny in that they worry so much about where we go after you die, and yet you never wonder where you came from.
Yeah.
And when you sit there and just think, oh, that's true. And what he was intimating is that where people go when they die is exactly the same place as we come from when we start to live. And we're not worried about living. We never think about the birth process. We don't think about that as being frightening or negative. But we put this Christian ideology of hell and sin on death, and it's made death unpleasant for the person who's dying. It's made death frightening for the family. That's where the grief is so huge. In Celtic, in my country, in Wales, in the old Celtic way was that you had a party when somebody died, because they were going off to somewhere much, much not better, not in the heaven, but it was a perfectly natural part of being born, and they would be coming again. They would come again in a different form, you know. So it's the idea that death is anything that is unnatural. It's not unnatural. It's a perfectly natural part of living. That's why it's important to enjoy your life, because it comes to an end.
Yeah, so it's you can appreciate it more. You have a quote here: "If your knowing comes from the heart, it's hysteria. If it comes from the land, it's superstition. And if it challenges power, it's heresy. This is not just history; it's the architecture of the crisis we live in now."
Yeah,
Again,
yeah,
this is like, this is the anger, and this is what we're up against, and we need to feel this. And
yeah.
so this is
The,
what we've
the,
been told.
the difficulty that we have is that we, as white Europeans, we are taught that the people that are in power over us are working for our good, okay? And blatantly at the moment they're not. And what we find, because science has come in on top of religion, as I said before, science is about repetition and belief in that repetition. You know, if anybody tells you that science isn't a faith, they're lying to you, because you can't prove to me. Think about it this way, right? And this is coming from somebody with a master's degree in applied biology, okay? Do you all know what minus 20 degrees is in temperature? When you go outside, if it's minus 20 degrees,
It's freezing.
it's freezing, yeah. But there's no such thing as minus numbers. They don't exist. But we trust science because science is saying it's on a scale, therefore it's a minus number.
Uh-huh.
There are no such things. There can be nothing that is no thing, you know, apart from Karbala. If you want to go to Karbala, we can. But
Yeah.
so we trust scientists. We trust scientists to say that gravity is 10 newtons per second. Okay? It's not. It's different all over the world. If you go up a mountain, gravity is different than gravity down at the bottom of the sea. If you go in, you know, even things like the speed of light. People forget that the speed of light is the speed of light through a vacuum. It's not a constant. It's different everywhere you go. Okay. So this idea that science isn't a faith is a lie. We have faith in science. Now, the only difference between science and religion is science is supposed to change its philosophy when it comes to new ideas, when it comes to new data. But more and more and more, we are finding that science is negating, is throwing away ideas because they think they're not scientific. If somebody, for you, for example, if you say that holding that crystal lowers your anxiety and makes you feel better, that is a true thing for you. But if I asked a scientist about that, he'd say, "Oh no, that's just a feeling. That's just a mental feeling."
Yeah.
They just, you know, the one of the things that I'm researching at the moment is the power of placebo. The
Okay.
fact that scientists now, clinical trials for drugs have stopped using the placebo because when you use a placebo, if the placebo effect is high, they can't release the drug. So they're not doing a placebo anymore in their controls.
I don't understand. Can you explain it
Yeah,
again?
yeah. What used to happen? So, for example, say there was a headache tablet coming out.
Yeah.
They would get a clinical trial. They would split the clinical trial in half. This half of the trial would have the paracetamol or the tablet. This half would have a dummy tablet. It would look exactly the same.
Yeah.
And then they would measure whether the effect was there. So these people in the placebo group, if they said, "Oh, yeah, cured my headache wonderfully,"
Yeah.
that's placebo effect. That's the mind taking control of the health. Well, if at the point that they did this, if the placebo effect was over a certain percentage, this tablet is not viable. It doesn't have a big enough effect. So they can't sell the tablet. It's taken out of
Oh.
circulation. Now, what they do now is instead of having a placebo effect, they have such big clinical trials that they say that, well, the size of the clinical trial proves the effect of the drug. So they don't check it against a placebo. Well, if your body is responding, you don't need the drug. you know. And one of the things that is really, really important that I think people realize, one of my heroes is a gentleman, a herbalist, a doctor called Nicholas Culpeper, who was a doctor in the 15th century, okay? And what he did, it was just when people were starting to charge for medical services, and they were barber surgeons and barber doctors, okay? They would go around the towns and people would go and have teeth pulled and that sort of stuff, okay? They were charging so much that poor people couldn't afford to have medical treatment, okay? Very similar to what we're seeing now in places like America. What Nicholas Culpeper did was he wrote books called The Complete Culpeper, one of them's called, and they gave details of plants that you could go out into the wild and pick safely. It gave doses, and he gave it away freely, okay? It's one of the reasons that things like my Patreon, I do for free. That's in honor of Culpeper, okay? Wow. Because I want people to have this knowledge rather than having to pay for it, okay? Yeah. So it's, don't tell my bookseller that though, because she'll kill me. But I really think that idea that health is something that we all should have, you know, healthy food, and that idea of enough to make you satisfied. Doesn't have to be huge. It can be sitting in a room with a book and a blanket. That is enough for you. You don't have to have the new car. You don't have to have you don't have to have the latest crystal that somebody's told you. Right, I'm going to be controversial now, okay?
Just now, beginning just now.
If AI comes in and it takes over doing jobs, if people are allowed to use the time that they have in study, in academia, in personal relationship, in looking after each other, in forming communities, then I can see it being a positive thing, okay? However, I think what will happen is that AI will make the rich people richer because they won't have to pay the poor people to do the jobs. And that is a disaster. I actually wrote a little ecological mythology called The Silence We Chose, which talks about this. It's a tiny little book. It's only about 70 pages. It's about £3 on Amazon. But it's about the fact that the changes we need in the environment and in ecology of the world are not huge. They're things that we can do as communities, but we have to be brave and step away from the way that we're doing things at the moment. And that it's work. It's hard. You know, if you think that growing your own food is an easy thing to do, it's not. You know, if you think killing an animal to eat is easy, it's not, because you have a relationship with that animal.
Yeah.
It's not an easy way of life. It's not this utopian idea that we can all go back to nature. It'll take millennia.
Okay, but it is something that you want to have happen at some point.
Little things like at the moment that you can see it at the moment, the price of petrol has gone up tremendously because of what's going on in Iran. And that means that the price of electricity will go up because we buy our electricity from a pot which includes all of the oil reserves, okay? So it's based mainly on oil powered. But many countries now, Wales included, yours included, I expect, have got wind, they've got solar, so why are we putting that energy, which doesn't cost the same, into that energetic pot? Why aren't we using that and pricing it rather than basing it on the oil? Why are we not investing in individual windmills, like having a windmill on the roof, having solar, like I'm having my roof repaired on Tuesday, and we tried to find out whether we could get solar tiles.
Panels,
it's too expensive, you know. But what I think is every new build should have solar tiles on the roof. In Japan, they're doing it, and Korea, they're doing wonderful things where, you know, because one of the problems that I have at the moment with solar power is that they're using fields that could be used to grow food, and they're covering them with panels, okay? If in Japan and in Korea, anywhere where there is a road where traffic drives, or anywhere where there is a walkway, like, you know, the covered walkways in supermarkets and that sort of stuff, they are made with solar panels on the top. Okay, they're all made in that way. Why are we in the Western world not following that model?
Yeah.
Because
Mm.
we wouldn't need to rely on fossil fuels then, you know, and it would be in like in our street, there's 18 houses in my street. We could all have windmills, we could all supply electricity to each other, but it means going back to community. And what happened was when Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan came in the 80s, they dissolved the idea of community. Do you remember the old greed is good and community is dead phrases they used to use? Well,
Mm.
that's what they were trying to do, was destroy community, because together in smaller villages and in smaller communities, we can look after ourselves. We don't need governments to do that.
Mm.
But it's about choices. It's about
And
learning to live smaller.
it's all part of this ecological crisis, and where what you're talking about is, I feel, relationships.
Mm,
I feel all the good people are now talking about relationships,
yeah.
relationships to plants, relationships to the universe and to each other, to the neighbors, to
But
everything.
if you think about it, we've gone through a phase. The last 50 years, people don't know who their neighbours are.
No.
There's no when I was a little girl I was brought up in a mining valley in Wales, and nobody's doors were shut. They were all left open, so the kids could play in different people's houses. If
Mm.
you wanted to go to the shop, you could. Like one of my favourite things is that I live in a street of 18 houses, and there are about 30 cars in our street. Well, my car is currently sitting in the drive doing nothing. Why can't somebody borrow that car from the street?
Exactly.
The idea of sharing frightens people.
Yeah. And so this is again about like programming, right? What we've taken in to be truth. Okay, Sian, I have to look a little bit at your chart and then I'll let you go. But I just want to so you know your own chart. That's wonderful. Is it okay if I say
Yes,
a
yes.
little feature there? Okay, good. Because I've been thinking about, well, obviously nature, but I also wanted to look for the ability you have as a writer, because that is, oh man, you can really wake us up.
Oh,
you,
I'm glad. I hope so.
you can unsilence us because of the way that you can put things. And so I've looked at that signature of Mercury at your south node, meaning in the astrology that I come from. This is something you come in with from a past life. And it's so significant because it's also the ruler of your north node. So it's
Ah,
a huge signature. And obviously, when we talk about Sagittarius and Gemini, these are the signs that it is in. It is communicative and it is about publishing. And it's also Sagittarius around nature and the whole natural relationship, the relationship to the natural world. And this signature that it's conjunct the south node and it's also the ruler of the north node, that's a big point and something that you could really go deep into. But just in short, that you've been here before, you've done this before, and I'm getting this sense like you just the world needed to be able to hear more or something, and here you are trying to make these points again. Like this is something where this is such a repetition, and in a way, we can say that all of our charts, in a way, is a repetition when we see it as a succession of lives. But there are some signatures that really amplify that you've been doing the exact same thing before, and yeah, so it's a really powerful signature of
oh, that's great. I didn't know that, so that's really good.
yeah,
I didn't realize that. That's really interesting.
yeah. It's layers and layers and layers.
Well, one of the things that has always struck me about my personality and my chart
Yeah.
is that I whatever I've been a teacher. Like I teach. I'm about my career was I was a biology teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a martial arts teacher. I teach witchcraft. So
Yeah.
it's like that bit of me really needs to come out. That bit where I'm teaching, which is
It's Sagittarius for sure. It's a teacher. It's like you can't learn and then not teach it to someone else. You have to pass it on because it excites you, and because this Mercury conjunct South Node, you're really good with words. Like you can make people understand.
can I finish off by reading a poem that I wrote in the
Yeah,
back of Unveiling the Green, because I think it's really, really important. Okay.
love that. I would love that.
Okay. It's called Not Them and Us, But We.
Mm.
Since mountains became molecules and water H2O, since our food became a group from the temple of Tesco, since we gave Earth just one day instead of every one, and we battle with each other for every single crumb, since we decided we were first, not one amongst the many, and we worked like slaves for masters who grasp at every penny, existence has been fated as the magic dissipated, with the memories of fungi and the road to Godhead lost. Till we see nature in its true form and not as a resource, when the steward is the servant and knows we're not the first, we will wander disconnected from the forest to the trees, till the world goes on without us and only memory remains of self-destructive monkeys with clever little brains, and our motorways regreen and our houses overgrow, and Mother Nature takes a breath and onward she will go. But if we can change our focus away from us and onto we could go on together, making life so heavenly. If we respect the other, the rocks, the plants, the trees, and think of us together, not them and us, but we.
Yes. Yeah. That's really good. I feel uh, it's really fitting when I'm talking about your individual chart that in a way now you pull this up and you're like, but hey, we're in this together. It's not just about me, right?
Yeah,
It's like that is what I think you're doing in the books as well, like just widening the perspective, opening it up. What are we actually? We're not just here alone. We
yeah.
don't exist. We exist through this
But
relationship.
isn't it a wonderful thing to think that we are never alone? You know, if you're a person who struggles with loneliness and
Mhm.
you walk out into the wood, that wood will lift you. It'll make you feel connected. It will give you that feeling of community. Even if you're not in a community, you will feel that connection. And that's what we want, that connection to others, that connection to other people, plant people, rock people, river people, other people, indigenous people. We just need to listen more and connect more. And once we get that done, things will start to turn around.
Yeah, listen more, connect more. Mhm. I love that. Really, thank you, Sian. I totally recommend your books. It has been a journey for me, and I can see that I have more to go because you you have written many books, and you are working on something. I can see as well lined up. Really good. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much
much.
for having me on. I really appreciate you.